His name was Ash Lowe. That was what the hospital bracelet said. That was what the nurse called him when she placed a cup of water on the small table beside his bed. That was the only name this world knew him by. But inside that thin, weak body, behind those quiet brown eyes, lived a man who had once made kingdoms tremble. Ash sat up slowly. His arms felt like paper. His chest hurt when he breathed too deeply. The hospital ceiling was cracked, and the light above his head flickered every few seconds. The room smelled like soap and something old. Around him, other patients coughed, slept, or stared at the ceiling just as he was doing. He remembered everything. In another life, in a life that felt both far away and completely clear, he had been Kael Drayven, the Alpha King, the strongest being across 12 planes of existence. He had never lost a battle. He had never bowed to anyone. He had ruled with perfect control and an iron will, and every creature in every world had known his name and feared it. Now he was a 19-year-old boy in a charity ward with a 400,000 credit debt and lungs that could not handle stairs. He was quiet for a long time. He looked at his hands, small and thin, with a faint scar on the right palm that he did not remember getting. He turned them over slowly. Then he placed them flat on the blanket and made a decision. He would not waste time being angry. Anger was for people who had not yet decided what to do next. The nurse returned an hour later with his discharge papers and a sealed letter. The letter was from his foster father, a man named Garon Lowe, who had died 3 weeks earlier inside a dimensional rift. A tier in reality, where hunters went to fight the creatures that poured through from the other side. The letter was short. Garon's handwriting was messy and warm at the same time. It said, "I always knew you were different, Ash. I stopped trying to figure it out a long time ago. Just survive. That is all I ever asked. The debt is real, but so are you. Love, Garon." Ash folded the letter carefully and held it for a moment. Kael Drayven had never had a father. He had never had anyone who looked at him and simply said, "Survive." He had been feared and obeyed, but no one had ever just wanted him to be okay. He put the letter in his shirt pocket, close to his chest, and walked out of the hospital. The city outside was loud and cold. Buildings rose on every side, most of them marked with guild crests, the symbols of organizations that controlled hunter activity across the continent. Hunters were everywhere. You could always spot them. They carried a faint shimmer of light called a rank aura, and the color told you exactly how powerful they were. Blue, amber, silver, white. Ash had no glow. He checked, quietly, as he walked. Nothing, not even a flicker. He was not surprised. He had already reached inside himself, in the quiet of the hospital, and found that his power was still there, sealed, like a door with no handle yet. He could feel it the way you feel heat through a wall, present, unreachable, but there. He walked to the Ironspire Guild branch to register as a hunter. This was not ambition. It was simple arithmetic. The debt collectors would arrive in 2 weeks, and guild work was the only legal income available to someone with no credentials and no family. He had no choice, and he had long since made peace with starting at the bottom. The registration hall was full of young people. Most of them were already glowing with rank auras. Ash stood in line and waited his turn without speaking to anyone. When he stepped onto the aptitude platform, a crystal pedestal that measured a hunter's power and assigned their rank, the crystal lit gray. Not white, not amber. Gray. A color the platform had apparently never produced before. Because the clerk stared at his screen for several seconds without speaking, the room went quiet in the way rooms go quiet before something unkind happens. Then the laughter started. It spread from the front row to the back, the way a small fire spreads when the wind picks it up. Ash stood on the platform and did not react. He looked at the crystal the way a general studies a map, reading it, not feeling it. The gray told him nothing he did not already know. The crystal was trying to measure something and could not find the bottom of it. It was showing gray because it had simply run out of scale. He almost smiled. Almost. A woman crossed the room and silenced the clerk with a single look. She was tall, with close-cropped dark hair, and the steady calm of someone who had survived too many real situations to waste energy on small ones. Her rank crest read C. Her name was Mira Voss. She said, "Assign him rank F and process him, or I file a discrimination report before lunch." The laughter stopped. The clerk typed. A few minutes later, Ash walked out with a small white card that read, Ash Lowe, rank F. He looked at it in the street. He had worn crowns. He knew how heavy they were. A white card was nothing, but it was a beginning, and beginnings were all he needed. Rank F hunters did not fight. The guild was clear about this. They were not permitted inside active rifts, could not join combat parties, and were limited to supply work, paperwork, and safe perimeter scouting. Ash did all of these things without complaint. He carried supply crates. He filed reports with perfect accuracy, and within 2 weeks, the clerks started routing the complicated paperwork to him, because his work was the cleanest in the building. When he scouted the perimeter of rift zones, he returned with observations so precise and detailed that senior hunters began quietly passing his notes to each other without mentioning where they came from. He trained alone every evening, not the training the guild taught. That was designed for people who already had power and needed to refine it. Ash's training was different. He was studying his own body, mapping where energy might flow, finding the small channels just beneath the surface. He was patient in a way only someone who had lived a very long time could be. Mira found him in the courtyard at 2 in the morning and watched for a while before he noticed her. She asked what he was doing. He said he was learning his limits. She said training like that at rank F would get him hospitalized. He told her he had already calculated exactly how far he could push without that outcome. She said nothing and left. But the next night she walked past the courtyard again, and the night after that. 6 months into his new life, a small shard rift opened without warning in the middle of a supply walkway. These were rare, unstable micro-tears that spat out a single beast before closing. 2 junior hunters nearby froze immediately. The beast was fast and low to the ground, already moving toward the nearest person. Ash stepped forward. He had almost no strength in this body. He knew that. But he had the memory of 10,000 battles, and that memory told him exactly where to stand. He placed himself not in the beast's path, but slightly to the side, a position that forced the creature to completely overextend in order to reach him. The geometry was perfect. The beast's instincts could not handle it. For 3 seconds, the world held its breath. Then something happened that Ash had not planned. The sealed door in his chest cracked, just slightly. A thread of something ancient and enormous bled through, and the beast stopped moving. It looked at him, really looked, and it made a sound that low-level beasts were not supposed to make, something between a warning and a cry. And then it turned and fled back into the shard rift just before it closed. Ash stood in the walkway with a supply crate still tucked under his left arm. Mira had seen it from the far end of the courtyard. She walked to him slowly and looked at him for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "What are you?" He met her eyes. "Rank F," he said. "Ask the crystal." She did not laugh. Neither did he. But something shifted between them. She was no longer watching him as a problem to manage. She was watching him the way you watch something that does not fit any category you were given. 3 months passed. Ash continued the work. He paid his first debt installment and sent the receipt to the collection agency with a note that said simply, "On schedule." Then the reports about the Phantom began arriving. 3 guild branches in the western region had been taken apart, piece by piece, without violence. Every hunter inside had reported the same experience. A deep stillness, a feeling of their rank aura being gently switched off, and then they were outside, unharmed, while the building behind them was dismantled. No one was hurt, but every hunter had temporarily lost their power. All of them described it the same way, like being shown what it felt like to have nothing. Ash read the guild intelligence briefing, and his face showed nothing. But that night, he sat on the edge of his bed and was very still for a long time. He knew who the Phantom was. In his past life, the only person who had ever truly challenged him was a hunter named Saren. She had been extraordinary, fast, brilliant, and completely fearless. They had fought, and he had won. But instead of granting her the honorable end she requested, he had stripped her rank in front of both armies and sent her home alive. He had calculated it would hurt her more than anything else. He had been right, and he had never once asked himself whether being right and being good were the same thing. She came to him 3 nights later, stepping out of a shadow in his dormitory room and removing the covering from her face. She was exactly as he remembered, older, quieter, with something harder in her eyes, but herself. He did not call for help. He sat on the edge of the bed and said, "How long have you been watching?" she said. "Since the hospital." He asked what she had seen. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I saw you carry crates without making a face about it. I saw you refuse to run when a medic was hurt, and running was the allowed choice. I saw you sign a debt that was not yours." A pause. "I saw you give yourself 12 minutes to grieve a man who loved a stranger, and then go back to work." She looked at him steadily. "I don't know what to do with what I saw." Ash told her the truth. Not because it was strategic, because he was tired of being strategic about things that deserved honesty. He told her she had been right about everything. He told her that the moment on the aptitude platform, when the room laughed at the gray crystal, was the first time in 2 lives that he had truly understood what he had spent a lifetime building. He told her that he had denied her honorable terms not only from arrogance, but from something he had never admitted before. She was the only thing he had encountered that felt like an equal, and he had not known what to do with that, so he had removed it. He said, "I owe you a debt I cannot repay. I am not asking you not to be angry with me. I am asking what you actually want now." She was silent for a long time. The dormitory was still. Outside, the city hummed. Then she said, "I want to watch you become something different from what you were, and I want it to be real, not a performance." He nodded once. She asked if he had a plan. He said he always had a plan. She asked if this one was worth following. He said, "Ask him again when his rank changes." She almost smiled. It was small and brief, and it cost her something. But it was real, and real was what she had asked for. 2 months later, Ash applied for a rank reevaluation. His file, 8 months of spotless reports, the perimeter incident, the Shard Rift event, observations cited by senior hunters without attribution, made for a picture no one could explain. Word spread. The registration hall was full on the morning of the reevaluation. Director Kael Drayven stood at the back with his arms folded. Mira stood at the edge of the crowd with her hands behind her back. Ash stepped onto the aptitude platform. The crystal lit white, not pale, not uncertain. White, a clean, total, flooding white, that filled the crystal from base to tip and held completely still. White was not a rank. White was what the platform showed when the thing standing on it exceeded the measurement scale. It had happened once before in 30 years. On the day the guild's founder first registered. The hall was completely silent. Ash stepped off the platform, walked to Director Vane, and said calmly, "I would like to renegotiate my employment contract." Someone began to applaud. It started slowly, and then spread across the room, the way warmth spreads through a cold space when someone finally opens a window. He accepted none of the offers that followed, as they were presented. Instead, he proposed a restructuring of the Rank F support classification, living wages for non-combat hunters, mission credits for supply and scout work, and a safe reporting process for falsely certified rifts, the kind that had sent Garon Lowe into a zone marked safe that was not safe. They approved 40% of the proposals in the first review. He noted the number, planned the next step, and began again. Mira asked him one evening, as they stood on the building rooftop, watching the city lights come on, whether this was what he had imagined when he woke up in the hospital. He thought about it honestly. He said no. When he first woke, he wanted to survive, then to reclaim what he had lost. But somewhere between carrying crates and training in the dark and signing a debt he did not earn, and choosing not to run when the world said running was fine, somewhere in all of that ordinary, difficult living, what he wanted had quietly changed into something he was still finding words for. She asked what he called it now. He looked out at the city. Hunters moved through the streets below, their auras glowing blue and amber. He said, "Purpose." She nodded slowly, like that was exactly the right answer. He never became who he was before. That is the part worth saying clearly. The Alpha King did not return. The man who had ruled 12 planes and never bowed, and never needed anyone, was gone. What remained was Ash Lowe, a hunter with a white crystal reading, an unclassified rank, and a debt still being paid in small monthly installments. What remained was a man who had received a letter from someone who loved him without knowing what he carried, and had given himself 12 minutes to feel that, and then gone back to work. What remained was someone who had sat with the person he had wronged most in 2 lifetimes, and told the truth instead of making a plan. And in the Ironspire Guild branch, the new field support wages had already taken effect. A scout named Lena came to him one morning and said that the safe reporting process had allowed her to flag a rift that would have been falsely certified. The team that would have gone inside had been rerouted. No one was hurt. She thanked him simply, without ceremony, and walked away. Ash stood in the hallway for a moment after she left. In his past life, he had received gratitude from crowds of thousands. He knew what large gratitude felt like. It felt like noise. This was different. This was the particular weight of a small, true thing said by one person to another in a quiet hallway. It was not noise. It was the opposite of noise. He found that he preferred it. The world's strongest Alpha King had been reincarnated as the lowest-ranked hunter. He had carried crates and filed reports and trained alone in the dark, and chosen not to run when the world said it was fine to run. He had sat with someone he had broken, and told the truth. And slowly, in the spaces between the large moments, in the hallways and the courtyard, and the small debt payments, and the one hunter who did not have to go somewhere dangerous because someone had done the paperwork correctly, he had built something. Not an empire, not a throne, something better. Something that, if you asked him, he would call by its simplest name, a life worth living.